Hi Rich, I thought I would just do a little video of the sway exercise that we did to try to get your oversway straightened out in your mind so that you're not just moving all over the place. So we're going to keep this as a kind of a classic oversway. Now there's lots of different types of oversways we can do and different characters if you do them in a swing dance, waltz or a foxtrot or in a tango. So we were looking at doing it in the waltz. Now when you add left turn into the oversway, the degree of turn that you do to the left is going to change the type of oversway. So we were looking at pretty much a classic oversway, or swaying over the girl. So I'm not rotating to the left. So for instance, if I want the lady to do an oversway with a développé, I will turn slightly to the left, enough that her foot almost naturally comes off of the floor. When we really overturn it, this is what becomes the throwaway oversway, so that her leg is swung behind her. So we do have to be careful, because the more rotation you put into it, the more likely her free foot is going to move. So we're going to do the classic one, and we talked a little bit about what we call sometimes the pre-sway, or in the tango, the challenge line, which is the shape to the left in a promenade shaping. It's not a true promenade position because our base is closed, but the heads are open and the top is slightly open. So we call it a promenade shaping, or a promenade type of position in the upper body. So we're going to just call that the pre-sway, and that may be level or it may have a bit of a shape to the left. The one we were practicing starts with the shape to the left. Now the exercise we did was to just have your feet together and move your hips slightly from one side to the other and let your head go to the opposite side. Then I'll turn around and do this from the back also. We'll keep the arms here for the moment and let the head move with the body. Now remember that a sway to the left is a lean to the left, which means your hips are going to the right. And a sway to the right, a lean to the right, means your hips are going to the left. I know sometimes that gets confusing. Say move your hips to the right in order to shape to the left. But we need to remember that when we're doing, well, we have shape and sway, they're not the same thing. We always have shape, we don't always have sway. In the oversway, of course, we will have both. Then we'll have a true sway over sway, or lean to the right, when we're doing the oversway itself. And when we're coming out, we're pressing out into promenade. We're going to maintain that sway and that shape in the bodies. But now when I come out to promenade, one of the issues was you were staying in the shape. So we need to move the base. Again, you need to move the hips back to normal and maybe slightly back and to the right to create a little bit of shaping or a little bit of metronomic swing coming out. We don't necessarily want a sway there. We want a bit of a pitch, the metronomic swing. So remember that you're doing it from the feet and the ankles, through the legs, and through the hips. So thinking of the saucer and the cup. So I'm not moving the cup, I'm moving the saucer, right, in order that the cup will respond. So we were dancing the oversway from promenade position. So we were stepping through on count one and then starting the preparation or the pre-sway on count two. Now we can sway on three and then come out on the next bar, but we decided to take a full bar for the oversway itself. So you're dancing one, you're doing your pre-sway on two, you're going to keep extending it on three, and then we're going to change into the oversway in 3 stages. Soften the knee, level the hips, tilt the upper body, and then turn the head. So that's a whole measure, and we want to do that smoothly and musically. One of the things I was emphasizing last week is don't turn your head right away and then you're just holding it. So don't go right here. Now, if we're doing it all in one bar or we're doing it in tango, the head would turn fairly quickly. But we're having a sequential movement, we want the head to be last. 1, 2, stay there. 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 1, 2, change, 3. So the exercise there would be the slight sway or shaping to the left. So moving my hip line slightly to the right. And then I'm going to move first the hip line and letting the rest of the body change, look towards the girl, and then move the hips back to neutral, turning the head to promenade, and just a little bit of a fall, not a lean. So we have really two sways. We have a sway left and we have a sway right. We maintain it, lose it, and then if you like, just a little bit of hip movement that way. So I'll do that from the back so you can just watch the camera and imitate. Watch carefully how I'm trying to move my hips before my head. So I have a shape to the left, and hips, upper body and head, and then hips, upper body and head, coming out. Shaping to the left, hips to the right, shaping to the right, hips to the left. Stay, balance it out, slight tilt. Now the other thing you want to practice is that we've talked about this many times on sway, the low side must be supported. So if I'm doing the oversway, I'm going to feel an additional push out through my arm and my body to be more secure and more braced. Here, to support the lady's back, I want her to shape over my arm. If I don't give her good support, she's not going to shape. And I think you understand you had some problems before when you were dancing amateur. You couldn't figure out when the lady says, hold me tighter or hold me more firmly. It's not that the women want to be squeezed. They want support from the body and support from the arm. But they don't always know how to tell you that. So when I go into my pre-sway, I feel as though I'm pulling my elbow away from my hip, because the temptation, of course, is to dump. And then when I change to the other side, I'm going to feel as though I pull my elbow upwards away from my hip rather than do this, which destroys her back. And then likewise coming out. So you want to keep this feeling of pull. And then coming out. So I'm going to show just a little bit of a practice you might do with a piece of TheraBand or elastic band to give you this dynamic feeling of pulling the elbows away from the hips when you're in a sway or even in any of your big curved shapes. So I'm going to take this piece of TheraBand and just wrap it around my elbow. And then attach it here to the hips, so that if I'm doing my sway to the right, if you use something that you have to actually resist a little bit, you'll find the muscles that you're using in opposition in your body. So pulling my hips away from the elbow and pulling that band, okay, in order to do that, the muscles in my upper back are going to engage. So if you don't have one long enough like that, you could actually even just attach it here and try to feel this pulling. Or I could do it on the other side as well. Again, these are things, and we have to, in our imagination, create the right feeling to use the proper muscles to give the body the support it needs. So we use tools like this that have resistance in them. Even this is a good thing to practice for the muscles that I need to engage in order to hold my frame. Because we don't want the muscles tight all the time, but if they're trained and you need to reinforce them, they'll automatically react. So this is not a very heavy-duty band. You can use different levels of tension. But even with this red one, I can feel when I try to pull my frame wider, the muscles back here are working. So it's a good way to train yourself because it's easy to practice with your arms up and your muscles very loose. I think there's an exercise that I gave you some time ago that's also good for this, where you keep this close together and just pump outwards. That helps again to engage those muscles in the back. So those are different conditioning things you can do, but to actually put yourself into the position that you're going to work against, as I said, tying that around the elbow, that can really train you to use your muscles properly when you're dancing. And of course, people are always bringing things out on the market. You know, you can put this elastic vest on, or you can put this frame on. One of the problems with the frame that some people use for training is you don't need any muscular effort. One of my students said, well, I would just lean on that. So it tries to put you in the right position. The other problem is that your position needs to change constantly in order to look stable. And then there are other vests that people have with elastic bands on them and these types of things. But it's just as good to take something very inexpensive and work with it just to get the right muscles involved. And then when you're practicing in your imagination, you have to create that within yourself. Just like if you're pushing a wheelbarrow that's empty, you don't have to use much resistance. But if it has weight in it, then you have to get behind it and use your body weight. So when we dance, we have to use our imagination in that way to create the right amount of resistance. So I hope I've covered all the points. The big point was not dropping the side, making sure you're starting your changes in your hips, and making sure your head finishes the action of your spine. So if you have questions on that, then we'll cover that this week. But hopefully that gives you a little bit better idea of the shaping we're using on that classic oversway.